So now we're in the basement of the house. It gets a little dark down here, so we're gonna get as much light as we can, but no light. So I'm gonna show you kind of what I look for when you get to the basement of a house. The basements will always be the telltale of the house. You know, a house can be made or broken on the basement. There's foundation issues that can be extremely expensive, and then also you can tell majority of your mechanicals from the basement. So if you got foundation, electric, plumbing, HVAC work you got to do, you know, the basement can cost $50,000 just in the basement. So you got to be very, very careful and make sure you get everything looked at in the basement. So, you know, we're gonna get it cameraed, and then I'm gonna talk behind the scenes here. So when I get to the basement, you got to look for water in the basement. So you know you got some water coming in on this side. Kind of go around, you got a little bit of water all the way around. So you got to know your market. You know, in this market, these houses built in 1901 and 1902 were never meant to be 100% dry. So a little bit of water right there doesn't scare me. But if you look over here, that whole, walk with me, this whole entire floor is soaking wet. So if this house was in good condition, this would scare me because there would definitely be something wrong with the water. But probably 90% of this water is getting in here because there is no roof, there is no soffit, there is no fascia, and there is no gutters. So everything's just falling right down to the foundation of the house and coming into the basement. So once you get the gutters fixed, you know, majority of this will probably be taken care of. So if all that was in order, gutters were good, you know, I'd be very nervous about this basement because this is a lot of water down here. So again, then you got to look at the foundation walls. So if you look up real close on the walls, these are old limestone basements. These were made, the house was probably built in 1901. But if you look at it, you know, you got a little bit of crack and stuff here, a little bit of crack here, but nothing like where you can stick your whole hand in it. So, you know, I wouldn't be nervous about this wall at all. We already said we need new glass block windows up here. You know, if you keep coming around, you got some water. I think majority of that would be fixed from the gutters and stuff. And then there's cobwebs and everything everywhere, which you can't sell a $400,000 house with this. So you're gonna have to send someone in here, just a labor guy, and just take a broom and clean all this stuff on out of here. So if you keep looking around the foundation, you know, you got a pretty big hole right here. You know, you got a hole I can put my whole hand into right there. So there's going to be some tuck pointing that has to happen on this wall here. Let's keep going around here. So, you know, no big, massive holes on this wall over here or anything. So you want to look at every basement wall, and if you got tuck pointing you got to do, make sure you budget to tuck point it. And if there's any big cracks and you want to look down the wall like this way, and if there's a bow in the wall or anything, that's something to be very nervous of as well. But this doesn't have any big crack in it. So this foundation is actually really good condition. So we got some water. We think it'll be fixed with the gutters and stuff. We got foundation walls, a little bit of tuck pointing cleaned up, and we'll probably paint it white just to make this look not like a dungeon down here. So the other things you got to look for down here are termites and like flooring foundation problems. So I go through and I look at every joist and every kind of cavity back there. If you don't know what termites are, Google termites and you'll see what termite trails are. It's like a bead of sand that runs all the way through. So you got to look for termites. So no termites over here. You know, I'll walk the whole foundation of the house, see if there's any termites. As I'm walking through, you know, I'll be looking at the joists, see if there's any big cracks in the joists, or if there's any big dips in the joists as well. You know, if there's a big dip, you know, there's going to be some framing you got to do. You're going to have to jack the house back up, put in a new beam. So I'm looking for cracks, dips, and termites when I'm walking through the basement. So one other big thing, the main bearing beam of the house always has these things underneath it. So you got something there, and something over here to the left. So that joist up there is the main beam. So you got to make sure that's in good condition. So that's something you want to pay extra attention to. Make sure, again, there's no dips to it. You know, there's no cracks through the beam or anything like that. You know, if you look across, this is very, very straight all the way through. These are nice and sturdy. These aren't going anywhere. So, you know, this is a very, very solid foundation. You know, if that was messed up, you'd literally have to take jack the entire house up, take out the beam, put a whole new beam in, put new footers in, new piers. You know, you're getting into the $3, $5, $7, $10,000 range at that point, depending how bad it is. So this is very solid right now. So you keep walking through, you're looking at joists, you're looking for mold as well while you're down here. You know, there's no algae present right now. You know, there's no broken joists, cut joists. Like something like this is cut out a little bit, but it's solid. You know, it's not bending, it's not bowing. This isn't fading down at all. So something like that I wouldn't worry about. If it was cut like, that's a spider. If it was cut like all the way up and over, and it was like a massive like gash in it, if it was more than like half of the beam, you know, you'd have to budget to replace this beam. And that's not the end of the world, but it's a few $100s that you got to be aware of, because a few hundred here, a few hundred there, they all add up. So, you know, like I said, this is a very solid house. There's no massive framing issues. There's no termites. There's no mold. Your center beam's really good. So, you know, the foundation, the structure is really good on this house. So the other things while you're down here, you got to look at electric, plumbing, and HVAC. So you got to find the electrical panel. So the electrical panel, if you look at the main breaker on the electrical panel, it'll say 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. That's how much power the house has. So this is a 100 amp panel. There's 4 breakers for a 2,500 square foot house, which is nowhere near enough electric for the home. You know, this should be a 200 to 250 amp panel. Instead of 4 wires, there should be like 12 to 15 wires coming out of here. So this panel's too small for sure. So you got to replace the panel, put a bigger panel in there, and then you got to rewire the entire house as well. So a new panel is like $1,000, $1,200. Rewiring a house depends on the size of the house and if it's gutted or not. You know, if you gut it all the way to the studs, electricians can just run right through it and it's real easy for them. But you know, if they're cutting out drywall and fishing electric and pulling it through the wall, you know, it takes a lot more of their time. So their cost is going to be a lot more. So, you know, to rewire this entire house, if it was gutted all the way to the studs, you know, it'd probably be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, give or take. And that's just for the electric. That doesn't include the light fixtures. You know, if they were doing this and it's not gutted and they're fishing lines all over the place, you know, this would probably be $10,000 to $12,000 on a rewire. So that's the electric. And also, where's the knob and tube? Is there any knob and tube down here? I think I saw some here. If you look for, here it is. So it's called knob and tube wiring. Old electric they did back in the day. That's what these things are here. Can you see this? Mm-hmm. So that's what these are here. And those things is what they run through. So if you see any, what type of material is that? Fabric, electric with little knob things that they run through. Is knob and tube, and insurance companies actually don't insure that anymore. So if you ever see any of that in a house, it's all got to go. Again, my opinion, everybody doesn't do this, this is my opinion, but you got to rewire the whole house. So we know from the panel, it's not big enough. We know from the panel, there's not enough wires. We know from the knob and tube electric, it's old as crap. You got to replace all the electric. So that's how you determine electric in a house. And then you got plumbing. So you look for the main plumbing stack. There it is. So the main plumbing stack is usually like a 4 to 6 inch pipe that comes into the basement. This is where all your shit and dirty hands and all the water goes and it disappears from the house. So you got to look at it. You know, obviously if there's any cracks in it, you know, you got duct tape down here, which they duct taped a leak together. So that's not going to fly when we're selling this house. So, you know, we know that's wrong with it. If you look at it, there's some cracks in the piping through it. And on this house, we have to add a half bathroom and a full bathroom to get the ARV that we want. So we're going to have to be moving drain lines, putting in new drain lines, new bathrooms, new toilets, new sinks. So with all this going on, we got to add in all the new stuff. We got to redo this duct tape. We're going to have to redo the entire plumbing system as well. So are there any plumbing supply lines in here? There's no plumbing supply lines in here either. So without any water, there it is. So here's the water coming in. So this is a meter. There's a meter in every house. That's where the water comes in from the city. So that actually goes into the ground and out to the main city line. Water comes in and fills the house. So sometimes if you got to replace the entire line all the way out to the city, that's usually about $3,000-$4,000. But this line is the old galvanized piping. You can knock on it if it feels like metal, it's old. And galvanized deteriorates from the inside. So if it's a 1-inch hole, 50, 100 years later, now it's a 1/2-inch hole. So it's less water pressure getting through. So if it's an old plumbing, you got to replace that as well. But this was PVC, which is plastic. It's usually a white plastic. That's new plumbing lines, so you can keep the plumbing lines. So these are old, they're cut off, they're not doing anything. So the whole house needs replumbed. So for all new all new plumbing supply lines, all new plumbing drain lines, stacks, like everything plumbing redone, new hot water heater, bathtubs, toilets, all that stuff. You're looking at, again, depending on the number of bathrooms, the size of the house, how long the runs are, you're looking at $6,000 to $10,000 for that. And then you got to buy the faucets. So there's still some fixtures on top of that you have to buy. I budgeted for it in the bathroom line item, but there's faucets for kitchens, bathrooms, all those other things you need to buy as well. Hot water heaters, obviously that's old, it's rusted and deteriorated, but on the panel on those, there's usually a date of how old a hot water heater is. So you can look at that and see the date. And if it's like 15, 20 years old, you probably need a new one. If it's 5, 6, 7 years old, you can probably keep the existing one. So that's something for you got to look for as well. And then one other thing, this pipe comes out of the hot water tank, goes into the chimney, and exhausts up out through the chimney. That's where like carbon monoxide and stuff goes. When you're doing older houses down here, to do that, the city requires you to reline the entire inside of the chimney, which can get extremely expensive, extremely fast. So what I do is I install an electric water heater, and then there's no carbon monoxide discharge. So if you do an electric water heater, you can actually, there is a carbon monoxide discharge, but you can take it and poke it out through the side of the house. So you don't even have to deal with the chimney, because a lot of times we take the chimneys out of these houses to get a full open concept. So if you lose the chimney, you lose the exhaust line, and you risk the chance of how much money it's going to cost to redo the exhaust line. So for me, I do electric water heaters, and 90% of houses we replace all of them. So that's plumbing. HVAC. So you gotta look at HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. That's what it stands for. So you got an HVAC run right here, which is this metal tube thing, and then it runs to the air conditioning unit, not the air conditioning, the furnace, which is right here. So you got to look at the furnace. So looking at the furnace, this one's deteriorated, rusted, gone. So it obviously needs a new furnace. This pipe here is rusted out, cut off. It's got 3 supply lines for this entire 4 to 5 bed, 2.5 bathroom house with the living room, dining room, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's nowhere near enough ductwork to power the entire house. So you got a new furnace. There's no air conditioning unit outside, which we saw when we walked around the house. And it's all the ductwork is either old, deteriorated, or just nowhere near enough for the house. So you're gonna have to redo the whole HVAC system, which the furnace, depending on the size and the size of the house, the size of the furnace, you're looking at $2,500-ish, give or take a few $100. A new air conditioning unit You know, same thing, 2,500 bucks, give or take. Again, it depends a lot on the house and the size of the house. And then to do all new duct work, again, it depends if the house is gutted or not. You know, if they got to go behind walls, that takes a lot of time for them. But if the entire house is gutted out, they can just run duct work right where they need to run it. So for this, you need a furnace, you need an air conditioner, you need all new duct work. You know, you're probably looking at $8,000 to $9,000 roughly. Again, give or take a few hundred, maybe $1,000 to redo the whole ventilation system in this house. So you got all new HVAC, you got all new plumbing, you got all new electric, you know, some tuck pointing down here. Water will hopefully get cleared up once we do gutters and everything outside. You know, we ain't got no termites. There's no real mold issues. No bows in the floor, no main beam cracks, anything like that. So, you know, luckily there's no structural or framing into this one. So that's kind of how you walk through a basement and kind of estimate repairs on it. So we'll see you up on the first floor here in a second. Thanks for coming to Flipping the Right Way. This download, the ebook, The 8 Reasons Real Estate Investors Fail, is basically my story of how I got started, some of the things and hiccups that I ran into. And if you read it and actually put it into implementation, it'll help you streamline your business and get your real estate business up and running quicker. So if you hit the download button right below this, give us your name, email, and phone number. We'll shoot you an email with the PDF attached to it. If you don't get it in about 10 minutes, just check your spam folder. It might end up in there. But otherwise, I wish you the best of luck investing, and we'll be in touch soon.